I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And today, as always, I have a special guest, an amazing warrior, and I'll talk about him in just a second. But first, I want to tell you what Warrior versus Zombie is about. And if you haven't been here before, why you should be here. And if you're joining us again, reminder. So, success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses. They're all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie, as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors from all walks of life. I interview entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's warrior guest is no exception. Raja Vaidya is an incredible warrior. He is a husband, father, scientist, author, speaker, and coach. Boy, that's a mouthful. After teaching martial arts for 38 years, he discovered a pattern in students moving from white belt to, which is what they call mind lock, to black belt, which is mind shift. So I don't understand all that. I'm not a martial arts, but I'm sure you can share a little bit of that with me today. Today, he effectively translates that into business, life, and relationships. Raja is a professional speaker who's keynoted on the TEDx stage, won the Toastmasters international speech competitions, won third place in the Ultimate Speaker Philadelphia, is in multiple black belt halls of fame, starred in the martial arts documentary movie, The Martialist, and he is a contributing author to the best-selling compilation of books, Ultimate Speaker and The Dose of Hope, which appeared on the New York Times Billboard in Times Square just this last December 4th. His next books, Unbox Me Today and Hug a Bully, are all anticipated bestsellers. Raja has accomplished all of this despite a lifelong stutter, and he proves in his actions that FEAR stands for face everything and rise. Raja Vaidya, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in your neck of the world today? It's basically here, it's dropped like 25 degrees in the last hour. So I don't know what's happening in your world, but I know you're a little north and east of me. But anyway, so what's it like there?
Well, ironically, it actually went up today. It's actually raining, so we have a low pressure system that came in, so it actually raises the temperature about 25 degrees. So it's actually raining today, and the temperature went up to the 50s. And tomorrow, where we're supposed to be going to a peddler's village and go check out all the Christmas lights, now it's supposed to drop in the evening. So I hope it doesn't get too cold too fast.
Well, I hope you don't get the experience. So one unusual thing here in Dallas, it's now, I think below 30 degrees. So, which it started out this morning when I got up about 45. So it's, and I know Tanya's in Las Vegas. So, I don't know what they're dealing with there, but the cold front has moved through here. I think it's headed your way. So I'll be praying for you on that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be cold. Yeah, Saturday and Sunday is supposed to drop below freezing both days. It's supposed to drop to 27 degrees. So I've already warned my children and warned my wife. Said, guess what? Time to bring out the ice scrapers again. So, and the funny thing is, so when we're all like getting dressed for work in the morning, my wife has to go to work. She's a manager of a pharmacy, and my kids, when they're going to work, or to a school, I scrape my windows as well as everything on my wife's van too. So I always have to do twice the work every morning.
Yeah, well, we could tell all kinds of stories. I lived in Michigan for 18 years, and I got to tell you, I was never so happy when I moved to Dallas to sell my snowblower and my shovel, because that was a whole back in the corporate world, trying to get to work by 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. and having to get up to 2 foot of snow pile up against my garage and having, shovel it before I even got dressed. And then, yeah, it's a whole thing. So I'm thankful that probably won't be in the equation. I just looked out the window. I don't think that's in the equation today. They said we were getting flurries, but here it's nothing like what we're used to in the Northeast. Well, let's do this. I want to get right into the next part. So for the audio audience, we're going to hear a little bit of our theme song. It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. But for the live audience here, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to hear your story with Raja, Vaidya, and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day.
All right, I know that was a quick break. I didn't even warn you because I had a guest. At one point, I said we're going to take a quick break, and she thought that I meant, okay, we're going to go away for a bit. She got up to go get a cup of coffee or whatever, and then I said, all right, we're back, and she came scrambling back. She'd never been on a podcast before, so she wasn't happy about that. So I've tried to warn people, but anyway, you did good. All right, so. Yeah. I'd like to hear, and I know a little bit of it, Raja, but I really, Raja, by the way, did a mastermind a couple of weeks ago. And so if you want to hear some more about his, value, his warrior, the black belt approach and some of that stuff, you can go back and it's in our replay over in the other group. So you can, and also on my YouTube channel. So anyway, so tell me, how did you get from where you started, and you get to pick where that is, to today? How did that journey go?
I really think a lot of it started with making a decision. And let me tell you a story that really leads up to that.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I was born in India. I came over to the U.S. when I was 3.5. My dad was working on becoming a dentist, certified in the U.S. He passed his board exams, and then it took him 2 years to working just odd jobs, making $2 an hour to bring my mom, me, and my sister over to the U.S. So we were up in like northeast Philadelphia, and there was a big Indian community over there. So we met a lot of friends, a lot of family, and a lot of family friends, etc. Were up there. So we went to a school up there called Lesh Elementary, and so while we were there, what was nice was that there were children of all different backgrounds, very diverse. So I played with everybody who was, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Indian, everything in between, and we all had fun together, and we just played it, and it wasn't a big deal, or like it wasn't even an issue. Race wasn't an issue. And then once my dad's practice really took off, he started making a lot of money. He wanted to get out of the apartment complexes that we were in and move to a nice home in the suburbs. So, fast forward a couple of years, I'm 7 years old. We buy a 4-bedroom colonial down in the suburbs of Delaware County, just outside of Philadelphia. And I started going to my school, and I didn't realize this, but it was 99% white Caucasian, and there's maybe 1% of the class was like minorities. I was the one Indian kid that was in the class. There was one black kid. There was one Asian kid, and the rest of the class was all white. And I didn't realize this, but apparently that was an issue for some of them. Because then when I would come to recess and want to play soccer with them, like I did every single other day with all my other past friends, some of them tried to ostracize me, keep me out. They tried to bully me. They started that. And one thing I didn't realize was that, I'm the skinny new Indian kid with big Coke bottle glasses. But I had a killer slide when I was playing soccer, so it didn't matter to me. But once I sort of started to prove myself that I could run fast, I could kick the ball, I could run around, all of a sudden, people started to accept me. But people had to teach me that I wasn't the same as them. they thought that I was Native American. So, I got a lot of questions then because the teachers wouldn't correct them that the Native Americans are not Indians. It was, it was a mistake made by Christopher Columbus because he was trying to find a spice route to India. So people thought that I was Indian, meaning like, I would get questions asked like, "Do you live in a teepee? Uh, is your best friend a buffalo? Is your father named Ten Bears?" I'm like, "No, dude. What are you talking about?" Some of this bullying happened because of my culture, but some of it also happened a lot because of my because of my uh, 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 because of my stutter.
Hmm.
So, fast forward a couple more years, I'm dealing with it every single day, every single year. And around fifth grade, it got really bad because in the middle school, this one kid, I'm not going to name his name, but just took it upon himself just to make my life a daily hell. And he would mimic my speech, and he thought it was so funny he could improv how I sounded, with my blocks and repeats and getting stuck. And then he made besides that, he got other people to jump in on it too. He actually wrote a stuttering song, which he actually got three other people to kind of perform at recess. And it started off something like, "Hey, my name's Raja, I stutter, I can't talk right, and I used to have a friend once, but it was only a cow, it was in India," or something like that. So all these kind of things just kind of happened. And while this is happening, I'm just in shock. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And why are people allowing this? Why don't the teachers do something? The recess aide, I think, was in shock too. She thought it was some sort of like an improv song or something. She didn't understand what was going on, but the other kids, they knew, and they watched and they laughed. And that was when the decision was made. I decided I wasn't ever going to allow this to happen again. So I thought, how can I change my life? And then a couple weeks later, just by good fortune, I guess, you know, the movie The Karate Kid had finally come out of theaters and was being shown on television. So I watched it, and as soon as I watched it, I realized that is my life changing event. I have to take karate now. So I asked my mom, and I asked my mom, say, "Mom, can I take karate?" She said, "No, beta, no, they're going to hurt you." So I was shut down. So then I asked my dad, "Dad, can we go see a karate school? Can we go check it out?" And he kind of understood, I think. So he took me. We found one class that was, quite a bit of a ways because there weren't that many karate schools in our area at the time. So it was actually 6 miles away, and so we had to go there. We saw the class, and then my dad signed me up for a year. So boom, there started my journey.
Yeah.
And so that's really where it all begins.
So it started with the whole martial arts thing being different. So one of the zombies obviously overcome, which is often the case, is we all have a desire, right, to kind of fit in, to kind of be accepted in the community, and all of a sudden, not only your nationality, your where you came from was confusing to the majority of people there, as well as you had the stuttering affectation that also gave them something other to focus on, other than who you really are. So, and it sounds like you've overcome that. So tell me a little bit more. So I know on your journey, you've done the kind of extracurricular thing of being in, you know, karate, being, in martial arts. But I think your day job or your career is fascinating too. So tell me a little bit about that and how you got from doing that, or how you're transitioning from that to what you're doing today.
Certainly. So, I actually, what was interesting was back when I had joined that school in second grade when we had moved, they thought that because of my speech impediment that I was actually mentally retarded. So they put me in the special education programs
Mm-hmm.
for that. They thought that I was actually mentally slow. And it took me years to fight out of that and to prove to them that, by the time I got to fifth, sixth grade, academically, I was one of the highest scoring students, not just in my class, but in the entire grade. By sixth grade, and my science and math scores were actually number one in my entire sixth grade, not just the class, but the entire sixth grade. So they finally moved me up out of that and put me in advanced algebra, advanced courses, etc. And then in high school, uh, I I saw that the most of my friends were in the a gifted program. So I wanted to be part of that. So I went to the teachers and said, "How do I be part of that?" They said, "Well, no, it's not usually done. They test you early in elementary school." So I said, "Well, I wasn't there then. I moved there after that point. So what do we need to do? What test do I need to take?" And they says, "No, no, it can't be done." So I had to have my dad come into the school and talk to the principal, and then talk to the guidance counselors and find out what the holdup or what the obstacle was. Their only holdup was, "Well, you may have to pay for the test." And I said, "Okay, so what? We'll do it. That's why you're going to hold back my entire life because of a couple of bucks?" So they finally agreed, and they found somewhere in the budget to take it. And it wasn't an issue about the money. It was just a matter of, I can't believe they were closed minded about that, that they wouldn't try to find a way to work around it. So anyway, somehow they did. I took the test. Lo and behold, I'm supposed to be in the gifted program, and I don't need to tell anybody my IQ. That doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, I finally felt like I had gotten to where I belonged. And then, so going through high school, that was a big turning point for me as well, because it started to help me gain my confidence. Wow, I did this thing. What else can I do? So I tried out in singing. I tried out in music to compete. Uh, uh, um, um, so one of one of the things that you'll see with people who have in any kind of a speech fluency is that when you sing, that you don't have stutter. So I was able to sing for my high school choir. I started to go into competition, started to compete for district choir, and I tried the first year, I didn't get in. Second year, I got into our touring group. Third year, I got into a district choir, but that's as far as I got. And then senior year of high school, I got into district. And at that time, I had a bite plate because I got braces
Mm-hmm.
my last year of high school. So I had a bite plate, and no lie, it's kind of like if you stick two fingers in your mouth. I had to sing like this,
Oh
and
no.
and I had to sing and talk like this, and I actually was losing weight. So what I just said was there, I had to sing and talk like that. And I started losing weight because you couldn't eat any solid foods trying to get past that horrible bite plate. Well, uh, I barely made it through districts that year. I got 14th out of 20. And I knew out of two districts, they were only going to take the top 10 out of 40. So I begged my parents and my orthodontist, please, please take this thing out so I can compete. And so finally they said, okay, fine, fine. It's close enough. Instead of 8 weeks, it was 7 weeks. They said it's good enough, and they relented. I went from out of the 40 being 14th, I went to first chair
Mm.
out of 40,
Wow.
and that was a shock to me. So I think possibly what may have helped was having that bite plate in forced me to really work on my breath control. It actually helped me.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, actually, the thing is that's so powerful. Number one is we're aligned in so many levels.
yes,
I didn't realize till I heard your story, but I was because I had ADD and because I
yeah,
was intellectually ahead of where they thought I should be when I was in first grade, and I moved schools, similar to yours. I mean, I ended up in the quote slow class, and
wow,
they basically it wasn't because of a stutter, and it wasn't it
yeah,
was because I was different, because
because
I
they didn't
was
understand
bored.
you.
Yeah, I was bored. I didn't have it. So yeah, so then but the good news for me, unlike your story, was in second grade,
Hmm.
I had a teacher, and they did testing at that point, and I
Yeah,
happened to be there, and they went after they did about halfway through the year, they did the testing, and they go, "Whoa, you're like at seventh or eighth grade. You're way beyond this. You shouldn't be in the quote slow class. So from that point on,
Exactly.
I went from there. But again, it's amazing because that warrior of other people's expectations, or there's a saying that goes, "I'm not who I think I am, and I'm not who." Or I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. And so it's really one of those things that it's a zombie because people have, there's a saying that goes, and again, I don't care what your nationality or even where you came from, you can have the same melanin in your skin or be from the same country, but there's this whole thing of the bigotry of low expectation, right? I mean, basically come in and they say, well, because you have a stutter or because your skin is this color or because you came from this country, I need to help you. Or, it may not be that I need to bully you. It may just mean that I don't think you're able to do that. And if you embrace that, if you expect that, then you perform to that. But you, as the warrior lesson here what I'm hearing is you rose above that. You said, no, I'm expecting more of myself in spite of these things, which is extremely powerful. So yeah, I love it. I love it. So any other parts of your story? I know you're is a scientist the right way to define, kind of your mindset these days in terms of your approach? Or
More so, I'm actually pivoting out of that because actually, as a scientist for the past 25 years, when I went to school, I got a scholarship to college to study biology, and I did well in college. I did well in grad school, and I jumped around a bit with my graduate courses because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do afterwards.
right.
So I landed in. I got into a I was about to complete my master program, and I got into a dental school, and I paid my first deposit to start that fall, and then my dad got sick. So when that happened, I dropped out of everything and started to work, and so I had to support the family and just make sure that if anything happened to him, I was there. So when I did that, I took 3 years away from school, and I just started working, and I got into a cancer research lab. And while I was there, and it was at the University of Pennsylvania. It's a very it's a very prestigious Ivy League school, as you know, and so I ended up co-authoring 3 papers while I was there in those 3 years. And people started to say, "Wow, Roger, you're really good at this." So I said, "Huh, I never thought about this before." So I kind of kept on going. So then my next job there was at Merck. I worked there over at the West Point, and then I got a job at GlaxoSmithKline. Started to go up the ranks a little bit. Then I got into this cancer research, a company called Immunicon that pioneered circulating tumor cell technology, or CTCs. And I became the lead trainer in the lab. I was a senior lab manager in the group there, and really loved it. And then we got bought out by Johnson and Johnson, so we became part of Janssen R&D. But really, kind of the kernel of how this all precipitated was that while I was in college, um, my one of my aunts actually got acute myeloid leukemia, and she was new from India, so she was kind of shy and didn't really want to go to doctors or hospitals, and so she waited way too long, and she had this gigantic mass in her neck, and unfortunately, she waited too long, and it became stage 4. Um, and even though she got the surgery, it was taken out. We still had to fly over or her brother from India to the U.S. to give the bone marrow transplant. Now even though I was kind of young, I understood the science of it, so they would ask me all the time to come and talk to the doctors, and still do that today. Like, I'm always the guy in the entire family. Everybody asks, like, "Oh, the doctor said this. What does that mean? And what do you think?" And so, you know, I could have been a doctor too, easily. Um, but that idea that back then she only had a 25% sur, 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 survival rate, and and the bone marrow transplant only bought her 6 months, and then she passed. And she was only
Okay.
25 years old
Wow.
when she passed away. So when you think about a life that hasn't even really blossomed yet, that's what I think about. So when I was in cancer research, and I tell people the story about why I do what I do, it's because of the people that we know. Everybody's lives has been touched by cancer. Everybody knows somebody who has passed from it, and even now through COVID. I mean, I've been blessed that I've worked on some major multi-billion-dollar drugs through my through my time and my processing. I mean, not to mention the CTC technology I've worked on, Imbruvica, Zytiga, uh, Darzalex was my baby. That's a multiple myeloma treatment, and that became a $5 billion drug with a B for Johnson and Johnson. So I can say that I put my stamp on that because I actually made the kits from scratch, by hand, and I can monitor that for over 3 years for the clinical trials. So uh, so I can say that I really made an impact and really saved lives following
Yeah.
up. And so that's sort of where I've been for the past 25 years. But as I saw a little bit more and more about what big pharma and how the politics start to evolve. I mean, there's politics in every major corporation, but I started to see that it was not where I wanted to stay forever, and
Sure.
so last year we separated, and after 11 years, and there's another story behind that I won't get into now, but involves toxic bullying and toxic company culture,
Hmm.
of which that I'll be talking about in 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 my next book.
Okay.
But I worked on this whole coaching project for the past 5 6 years and learning and expanding my mind and creating that mind shift. So, like you say, dealing with your own zombies and facing them, and that's where I got the idea that fear is not about being afraid, but it's about facing everything and rise.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I really, really wanted to hear your story, and that does connect a lot of the dots and makes it kind of clear in the journey. And as we said, there's a number of zombies along the way. Those who listen to this podcast will have heard them in your story. The various limitations, the overcoming. It's again, we're all infected. It's kind of like the disease. When you look at
Yeah.
genetics, right? We all have the little potential to have cancer or all these other things, right? They're all there. It's just whether they're turned off or turned on. They're triggered, and how do we do that? So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. I want to hear a little more of the theme song. We'll come right back for the audio audience, and we'll hear a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing, the unique value you provide, and where we're going after that. So let's take another quick break. We'll hear a little bit of the theme song. We'll be back with Raja Vaidya and Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
Amazing journey so far. Your story is fascinating and wrought full of zombies and wins and warrior achievements along the way. But tell me, why are you doing, now that we know that you're not in you've moved out of the scientific world and you got a story behind that, and we'll get to hear that when we buy your book. But let's talk about why you're doing what you're doing today, the coaching, the black belt stuff, the book. Tell me a little bit about that, and we'll go from there.
Certainly. So in 2015, I was in a head-on car crash, and my head smashed the windshield. So I was going about 30 miles an hour. The other person was going about 40, and my car slid into the other lane during an ice storm on the way to work. And unfortunately, add that together, I probably hit the windshield about 70 miles an hour. Not fun. Hit the steering wheel, even with the seatbelt on, and it definitely hurt. I had glassed my head for 6 months. I couldn't turn my head to the left for 2.5 years. and my right eye was not tracking the same as my left eye for about a year. So it was hard to focus. Plus, on top of that, I started to have a lisp. So I think I must have had either a concussion or a mini stroke or something,
Hmm.
because I was actually talking kind of funny. So I had to stop. I had to figure out what was going on. So by by facing what was happening, I said, "Oh, great!" So on top of my speech impediment, now I have a lisp, or this issue with my speaking. I have to find a way to enunciate better. I have to find a way to speak better. I really kind of have to. I've been avoiding this my whole life.
Hmm.
I finally said, you know what? I have to find a way to really change this. And so I joined Toastmasters, started to learn how to speak, how to present myself in a way that makes me seem like a leader. Because one thing that people don't realize is that when you're stuck in a block or a repeat, you lose control of your body. There are all these physical manifestations. You're trying to get the words out, and it looks unpleasant to
Hmm.
somebody watching. So basically, even if you are the authority person in the room, you lose that authority. You lose that
Hmm.
sense of tone also, because you're trying to force something out. So uh, they say that of your communication, only 7% is actually verbal, 38% is tone, 55% is nonverbal, is actually body language. So if you can't control 93% of how you're talking to people, you don't appear like you're the one in charge in the room, and it's
Right.
embarrassing. And it's sort of like you're in a room of 10 people, but you have a duct tape over your mouth.
Hmm.
And even the times when you can talk, it's sort of like in your car, you're pressing on the gas, but the emergency brake is still on. So you're trying to go, but you got to have to really grind through. You got to put so much extra effort just to get forward. And so it exhausts your vocal cords at the same time as well. So by taking Toastmasters, I wanted to overcome that obstacle, that challenge in my life. And truly, it's really made a world of a difference. Now, when I speak, I'm a lot more confident. I'm a lot more relaxed, if anything else. And my whole transformation journey, I started reading books like crazy every single week, going through audio as well as books, and doing masterminds and trainings with gurus and coaches and retreats. And after 5 years of that, I actually wrote my own book called Unbox Me Today, that is going to be coming out
Hmm.
probably next year. And where I talk about my 5 pillars of confidence. Where we talk about health, wealth, mindset, faith, which is really value systems,
Right.
and 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 like a family, which is really relationships.
Hmm.
So by focusing and trying to balance those pillars in your life, it's sort of like a rising tide. It's going to raise all ships, and that's
Sure.
really why I do what I do now, because so many people have these self-limiting beliefs that they don't realize. So they have a blind spot, and in every life, people don't realize that there is what you know about what you know. There's what you know that you don't know, but there's also what you don't know about
That
what
you
you
don't know.
don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So I help to shine a light on those blind spots to help them move forward.
That is awesome. And for sure, from a unique value that you bring, just from hearing your story and stuff, I almost don't have to ask that question because there's so many things, so many zombies, obstacles, things that you've risen above. You've chosen to not accept the that the possibility isn't there because of the challenge. And that's the whole thing, right? We all limit ourselves to things because maybe we tried them before, or we feel like we're a victim, or we're disadvantaged. And frankly, again, it's faith, knowing that you're here for a purpose, knowing that you have unique value, and over the fear of, well, what if I start stuttering, can't stop, whatever it happens to be, right? But now you're recognized in the speaking world, even with the thing. So that's amazing. So tell me, um, I what kind of impact? I mean, I kind of understand your value and kind of why you're doing it. You want to help others, but what kind of impact are you hoping to have? millions of people. I know you do a one-to-one coaching. You're writing a book. Obviously, you want to get your message out further than just one-to-one. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, what I do and what people hire me for, Robert, is that they hire me to do workshops to help change their company culture. I do
Hmm.
programs where I help companies improve their toxic work culture, and part of that process is to help the managers to understand that they are not communicating with the employees in the way that they understand. And part of that executive coaching is about understanding what the
Hmm.
audience needs, because a lot of us think that, well, I'm the manager, they should just pay attention to me. Maybe, maybe, but as a manager, you're also a servant leader. You know, you when you take that attitude, there's so many leadership books now that talk about how IQ is not the most successful indicator about your success. It's actually your EQ and your RQ. Your
Hmm.
EQ is your emotional quotient, how well you understand others, and your relational quotient, which is how you connect with somebody else. And if your EQ and RQ are low, it doesn't matter if you have a high IQ. And
Right.
that's the pattern I kept seeing in the big pharma sector. Lots of people with big brains, very low EQ and RQ, because
Hmm.
they'd focus on the data. They would treat people like they're a robot, and people are i- interchangeable, and that's just not the right way to be treating people. And hence, you start to create a toxic work culture, because then the people that are there, they're just doing the work, grinding it out. They're not getting recognized for their work. I mean, I wasn't, certainly. I remember back in 2016, going as far back as that, I did a huge project, cloning project that I had to do, with somebody else. I told them that the workload was too much. They didn't listen, and they made me do it anyway. I was doing the work of two people, so
Hmm.
I injured both of my rotator cuffs. And then the on-site doctors told me, you shouldn't be doing this. And I told them no, and they still made me do it. And so they put me on physical therapy for a year, and my shoulders are, maybe 5 years later now, maybe they're starting to come back to normal. It's not quite the same.
Yeah.
And so, that lack of misunderstanding, of listening to people, plus coupled with the fact that, I did all that work. Half of the work in the presentation that she gave was mine. My name wasn't on the front cover of the presentation. So she
Yeah.
got all the accolades, she got all the credit and the promotion, but I didn't,
Wow.
and that pissed me off, to be honest. And I told
No
my
doubt.
managers, I said, uh, "Why don't you do something? Why didn't you say something?" And they said, "Oh no, everybody knows how much work you did." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. No, no, they don't, because look who got all the appreciation for it. Look who, and I got injured for it, to boot." So, when I at the time, my gosh, like my daughter was 3, 4 years old. I couldn't pick her up.
Wow.
That's terrible. Can you imagine if you can't pick up your kid and like walk around with them? Like if she would ask me, "Daddy, can we do the elephant?" I used to crawl on my hands and knees, and she would sit on my back, and we play the elephant game, or I would put her on my shoulders, and we'd like run around the house and go crazy, and just
Hmm.
just fun things with kids. I couldn't do that anymore. They took
Yeah.
away those precious moments with my family. So as a result of that, part of my journey was learning about interaction, learning about human interpersonal relationships.
Hmm.
Many of the great books out there, like the Five Love Languages, or about the Four Agreements, or about extreme ownership.
Right.
Fantastic, fantastic stories. I still go back to How to Win Friends and Influence People, and try to like read that every year. The the Millionaire Mindset, also the Magic of Thinking Big, and
Great
another book I
books.
truly love, The Power of Full Engagement. And that's just off the
Mhm.
top of my head, just
Sure.
and there's so many more. But by learning all of these and starting to implement those strategies about how we connect with people, all of a sudden I started to realize, you know what? My boss was an auditory learner and I was a visual learner. We weren't talking the same language. So
Right.
when I started to explain this to other people in my lab, I started to say, you know what? If we speak in each other's correct language, we can understand each other. There's less mistakes, less misunderstanding. We save time, and 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 the and the productivity goes up.
Right.
So that is part of that executive communication. That if you are a manager and you don't understand that, you're speaking in the wrong language to your team, and they don't understand you. As soon as I realized what my managers were, I adapted, and we improved.
So you're it sounds like you're targeted a lot on those who can influence large groups of people through improving their EQ and their RQ and those kinds of things, even though their IQ may be high. And I've seen that all the time. I mean, working in large corporate environments and with large companies, it's kind of a saying that I say, it's nothing worse than stupid smart people. And it's really, that
Yep.
sounds kind of pejorative, but it's really not. It's really just that we know what we know, but we think then that somehow translates into every aspect of life. And the reality of it is knowing, how you're coming across, knowing what they, how to communicate, as you point out, with them, and then knowing how to go on that relationship journey with your team or with your network or with your client. It applies everywhere, right? It applies in your family.
Absolutely.
As fathers, we know what we know. We know what we got through. But the hardest thing for me to embrace with one of my kids was they had attention deficit, and I didn't even know I had it. I just knew that I had powered through some stuff, and my dad, who I loved, and respected, said, well, suck it up, son, and get going. You can do this.
Yeah.
And fortunately I was able to, but it turned out that I had a challenge I didn't realize, so I didn't even accept. I just knew that I had to get through it, kind of like similar to what you're saying. So it sounds like you want to impact, you want to you're starting down this path, and you're really intending to bring up the EQ and the RQ level of the world, if you will, and going through it and trying to find those large audiences. That's why you're going to the stage and that kind of thing. Well, let's do this. I want to, we got to come up to what I call the land the plane segment. After 4 million miles on airlines, they use a lot of plane analogies in the world that I came out of. But let's take a break. We'll hear one more snippet of It's Not the Getting There, our theme song, and we'll be right back to hear what you want us to take away. So I'll give you a minute to think about that, Raja, but what do you want us to take away from this discussion? And we'll be right back with Raja Vaidya and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, Raja. Well, for those of us that have more story and have so many different ways we can go, I'm looking forward to when you and I get to chat next week, and we can talk about things you want to talk about, because I think we've got a lot of areas we could pursue. So I'm excited about that. So, as I hinted before we took the break, for the audio audience, if we take away anything or any one or two things or whatever from this podcast, from this show, what would you want us to take away?
Is that, well, here's two things that I thought about. First is, everywhere you go, people will chip away at your confidence, because no one tries to elevate your confidence. Everyone tries to elevate their own. So you must protect your confidence at all costs. Make sure that if you feel marginalized, you feel put down, you feel that you're not getting the credit or feel the self-worth that you should, then you need to change your location, because maybe you're not in the right environment. Maybe you're not at the right company. Maybe you're not in the right group within your company. Maybe if you don't feel it at your church, try another church. Maybe it's if you're at the gym and it doesn't feel good there, try another gym. Because a lot of times that we don't feel our self-worth. It's not because we don't have value. It's because we're in the wrong location. And it's up to you to start to pay attention to that and say, you know what, if I'm not getting the value that I'm supposed to be getting, it's time to move on. Maybe you have outgrown the place where you used to feel comfortable. And that leads me to my second part is that in order to protect your confidence, you have to now grow. And and by grow, I mean you want to expand. You want to augment your life. You want to make a version 2.0 of who you are. Because everybody right now, I don't organize people in. Uh, when I have my clients come in and originally talk about like most coaches will ask you, scale of like 1 to 10, where do you fit in your health, wealth, mindset, faith, and family? Where do you feel on that? Well, if somebody says, well, I feel like a 4 here, I feel like a 5 here, I feel like a 3 here. Well, that's you validating yourself as a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of staying in that mode, I say, all right, we're going to, that's great. You wrote all that down. Thank you for that. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take that piece of paper, pick it up, tear it in half, and tear it in half again, and tear it in half again, and tear it in half again, and tear it in half about 16 times until you can't really read anything on there. Now, throw it in the trash. And I want you to put everything else on the new sheet of paper as a 1, because we're not comparing ourselves to what we think we are. We're only comparing ourselves to our growth. So, as a martial artist, and this is what really brings us full circle, is that I saw that there was a pattern between with the students that actually made it to black belt versus those that didn't, because
Mm-hmm.
the ones that stayed in a white belt mind lock, meaning they thought they knew everything, their their cup was full already, and we couldn't teach them anything else because they already decided they knew it all, and they wanted to just keep on going their way. Their mind was still locked, and I call that a white belt mind lock. You
Right.
have to shift into that and realize there is something more. There's something more beyond yourself. There's something outside of your own small bubble in the world. And when you start to realize that, you have to start to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And when you start doing that, that's where your growth happens.
Amen.
And on the other side of that uncomfortable growth, that's where your success lies. That's where your real success lies. And that's when you start to create that black belt mind shift. And if you can create that black belt mind shift daily in your life, now becomes a tool, it becomes a strategy, and it becomes a way of life. That's why so many people who are black belts in the martial arts, somehow all of a sudden they become so good at so many other things in their life. It's because that black belt philosophy, that black belt mind shift is so universal. It applies to all areas of your life because now you see where you've been holding yourself back. Now you see where originally there was something you thought was impossible, and you've now learned to break impossible.
That's beautiful, and I agree 100%. In fact, again, we use different words, we use different ways of communicating, but absolutely, there's no growth that occurs within your comfort zone, whether it's physical or emotional or intellectual. Right? We're always learning, and you need to build upon the strength of your successes and not allow your failures or what somebody else tells you you can or can't do, even if it's your own zombie brain, right? You have to be willing to realize, as I always say, if anything were possible, what kind of impact would you like to have in your world? And oh, by the way, everything is possible. And I believe that. I mean,
Yeah, I truly believe that too.
I'm a Christian. I believe, my Bible says all things are possible for those who, love God, are called. I mean, if you're there, you know why you're here, you know what you're striving to achieve, right?
Indeed.
Then anything is possible. It's just limited to your imagination. And unfortunately, our imagination gets squelched, or we get, your title of your book, I don't even know what it's going to be, but you got to get out of that box. You got to get out of the box of your experience, right? So that's beautiful. Well, tell me this, I know you're now on the Be Connected platform, and I appreciate having you here as my host, and you getting, functionally there. And I realize it's new technology, but you and I know that, again, it's outside our comfort zone. We're learning as we go. But also, how else do we best stay in touch with you, Raja?
Well, you can contact me via my email. It is Raja, Raja, V like victory, speaker at gmail.com. That is one way. The other way is you can book a calendar invite with me to really speak about if your company or your group wants to hire me to speak for them, and that is I do have a calendar link. I can share that with you another time, but it's
Yeah, I'll add
basically
it to the show notes. Just email it to me,
perfect.
make sure I have it, and I'll add that. So if you're watching this on the
Hmm.
YouTube channel or on Be Connected, you'll see that
Gotcha.
that
And
link in the show notes.
great. And then thirdly and lastly, there's that speaker confidence workshop that I spearheaded at Johnson and Johnson for the past 3 years,
Hmm.
and I won an Inspire Award to change company culture. That one I now serve the public with, and that's usually a like 197 or 147 offer. I can give you a coupon here for your tribe to get $100 off that, so you can get it for as low as $47 and beyond that, and really start to change the way that you improve your confidence right away and find the how, the what, and the why of how to engage with people so that they not only like you, but they start to love what you tell them. So you are now the authority figure.
That is awesome. Well, Raja, I hate to say it, but
Yep.
we've come to an end. But thank you so much for serving. I know that those who are either seeing this in replay or listening to it on our podcast will be served greatly by hearing your story. But we're going to land the plane for this episode
Yep.
100 of Warrior versus
Excellent.
Zombie. Thank you being part of that. And we'll see those live in the Hive next Thursday with another episode. And again, let's hear the final outro of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie.
Thank you so much, David.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.